So we're here today with Group Chief Instructor Paul Kelly from Martial Arts Concepts in Stourbridge, Dudley, and Hales Owen. And this is mainly a podcast and an interview to get some information out there to all the MAC students to make sure everyone knows what's going on and what's happening moving forward, and a few words from Mr. Kelly himself. So what has COVID meant for MAC so far, Mr. Kelly?
Well, I think now we're in this situation as of last night that we've actually shut all three of the academies, which is kind of a body blow to us in terms of the fact that we can't support our families, our students with our normal class base. But I think, you know, we were expecting this to some degree. I think if I'm honest, I think when we started off, we all hoped that this coronavirus would pass us by. But I think as we've seen the impact it's had on the UK, that's obviously made a lot of difference to how we view it. For me, there were two key factors socially, if you like. One, that we could support our students and our families, not only in terms of delivering martial art classes, but really in terms of keeping them safe. So immediately we knew that there were issues to do with this virus. You know, we went straight into deep cleans. We made sure we did the research. We were cleaning surfaces. You know, we'd made sure we got hand sanitizer. In fact, I'm waiting for a delivery of litres of the stuff at the moment. But we went straight through the protocols to immediately control as much as the information we had, the impact that it would have within the academies. From the get-go, obviously we had mixed responses. So 90%, 99% of those very positive. So we had the situation where, you know, our smaller students, our younger students, probably the parents in that case, taking decisions based around, you know, what they thought the virus may or may not do, which we totally support. At the end of the day, we want anybody to feel safe and comfortable in our environment. Our juniors didn't really impact so much initially, and we didn't see a massive fallout in the numbers in the academies. Our adults, on the other hand, they were just stayed rock steady. None of the adults that turned up seemed to be bothered about the impact of the coronavirus, and they all seemed to want to turn in and train. Across all the classes, we were rigorously enforcing, making sure you wash your hands before you came, making sure you sanitised regularly during the class, making sure that if you or anybody in your family looked like they had any kind of indication, please stay away and look after them. That in itself was challenging for us, not in terms of what we could deliver. We've been teaching martial arts in our academies for over 20 years, and I've personally trained for over 40 years. So to actually be able to train something or to adapt the training wasn't that difficult. What we were concerned with constantly through that is the social conscience aspect. Were we doing the right thing? At which point should we move or change our strategy? And last night, the Prime Minister basically did that for us. So shops, clubs, bars, gyms have all shut down to create the social distancing that we need to deliver to beat this virus. Hence, from our point of view, that's total social consciousness that we really needed to buy into, and we're already prepared for. We're just waiting for the off. What that means now is that today the team has been together. In fact, FIT, which is part of our Stourbridge Academy, as I understand it, have been outside training. So the instructions from the government were clear. They don't want groups or large groups in buildings together in close proximity. But they did stress that outside training was okay. In the short term for us, that meant today ramping up our online content. You know, our instructor team have been, over the last week, we've been preparing drills, skills, solo drills, partner drills, drills from boxing, kickboxing, groundwork flow, and all these different things so that we can get these out via various platforms. You and I are speaking on Zoom right now. We've asked all of our members to join or get the Zoom app and get themselves connected, because now, as we're over the coming weeks or however long it takes, we will produce content. We're also within our Cubs actually. Sam this morning ran a live session for the Cubs, which got great feedback. Some of this online stuff, to be fair, is quite new for us. It's quite easy for us to deliver a drill. So, you know, to anybody that from Mac that does listen, the technology may cause us a few issues in the beginning, or not the technology, our ability to adapt. We're okay punching and kicking stuff, tapping keys, etc. is a bit more difficult. As I was once said to me, a computer once beat me at chess, but was no match for me at kickboxing. So, you know, that's probably going to be the message for us. But we will do our best. We will get the content out there. We want to do some live things via Zoom and via Facebook Live, where we have conversations with or Q&As with our students and the families, where it gives us an opportunity. And I think that is the big factor for us now, is how do we create something positive out of the situation that we're in? And that for us is going to be to get our online platform moving, supporting, and to spend some time reflecting on some other areas of the martial arts rather than the physical training. And I think you'll see shortly, we'll go if the outside space workouts are really correct and that we can do them, we'll follow up with some of those soon too. So kind of right now we're at a dead stop. Bigger picture, this is the time when we need to support our students and family, but we need them to support us too. We need them to engage with us, to share with us, support where we can. We'll do exactly the same back. If you need help, we'll help you. If we can support, then that's fantastic too. I think the biggest issue for us right now is how long this is going to be. What is it going to mean on a longer term basis? But we can't control that, so we're going to do the thing that says don't focus on what you can't control, focus on what you can. So for us, it's day to day, get martial arts out there to our students and to the families.
Right, that sounds really comprehensive. Talking about your journey to get to this point in time, it might be worth for some people that might watch this to explain a little bit about your lineage and your training to get them to understand how far this journey has been for you up to this point. Okay.
So for me, my dad was a very good amateur boxer, came from Ireland, boxed for the British Army, or boxed in the British Army, worked out of or trained out of the Ladywood boxing in Birmingham with some of our great heavyweights, etc. So that for me, from a young age, boxing was in the family. Fast forwarding probably then to the 70s, I remember seeing Bruce Lee in the Royal in Cradley Heath. So a lot of our Black Country family members, the Royal, Cradley High Street, we used to call it the Flea Pit. And I remember being in there at the time then when the Asian martial arts genre was kind of filling into the picture. So one-armed swordsman, one-armed boxer, so on and so forth. And at first, these were kind of, well, it's good, it's different, but it's not kind of real, is it? A guy on a mountain on one finger on it doing a handstand, but it's okay for a Friday night. And then who popped on the screen but Bruce Lee? So I can't remember, it would be Fist of Fury, the Big Boss, or the Chinese Connection, as it was called. Fist of Fury was the first film that really struck me, and there's this guy, and there's a lot of cultural messages in the film in relation to the Japanese and the Chinese, but the film itself was amazing because it was probably the first time ever that we saw somebody doing something that looked realistic, and not only that looked realistic but looked phenomenal. You know, to watch Bruce Lee in action in that film was almost like a light bulb moment for me. And I kind of looked and I thought, wow, I've got to get to that. I've got to understand that. I've got to see where that is. I'd studied Shotokan karate for years. Loved it. I thought it was absolutely awesome. But this kind of looking at Bruce Lee and seeing him and going, wow, what is that guy doing? What is this stuff? How is he trapping? How is he hitting? How is he holding? How is he defeating a whole room of Japanese black belts? And what's those things that he's waving around in his hand, nunchucks and whatever else? Was an absolutely amazing experience. But you have to go back now for some of our younger people that are listening, and for the older ones. This is a time when you couldn't walk out and go and Google it. You couldn't walk out and just, ask Siri, hey Siri, who is Bruce Lee? This was a time when you had to get on the bus, travel to Birmingham, get into W.H. Smith, look for any kind of information that you could find that would help you establish a connection to Bruce Lee as he was then. And that took a lot of work to find it. And I can remember hearing the name Jeet Kune Do for the first time. Jeet Kune Do for me was like, wow, what is this? I've heard of Shotokan, I've heard of Aikido, I've heard of Wado-ryu, and all these other things. And suddenly there's this Chinese martial art. And Lao Ga was a well-known name back then. Taekwondo from Korea, and then also Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. Wow, what is the way of the intercepting fist? And obviously from then onwards, and it wasn't an easy journey. We've got 3 MAC academies and plenty of other academies around us now, ranging from kickboxing right the way up to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And they all serve parts of our community, and which I think is superb. But back then, most people, if you were lucky, it was the white gi parade, so it would be karate people, taekwondo people, and they would be in church halls and leisure centres, and it would be pay as you go, and they wouldn't have equipment. And in fact, we had this discussion in the academy the other day: how can we practice social distancing when so much of the work we do is partner work or focusment work and stuff like that? And I went, this is easy. You go back to line work. Wow, won't our students be bored? No. Well, I did it for years and I loved it. I love somebody calling out something to me, or somebody clapping their hands or clicking their fingers or raising a hand, and me trying to beat that as fast as I possibly could. I loved all of that type of stuff. Do I think it is the best way to train or the only way to train? No, I think it's a variable position, but we should try everything. Everything that we do to map out how the body works is another piece in a puzzle, whatever that piece may be. Anyway, Jeet Kune Do for me then became the quest. I bought the Tao of Jeet Kune Do way back to understand what Bruce Lee was trying to do. Any magazines, anything that came out, got those as well. Looked up Wing Chun classes. And I travelled from Blackheath all the way over to the other side of Warsaw for a Wing Chun class. Now, if I wanted a Wing Chun class, I could just walk. I could go a mile down the road from my own academy. If I wanted a Wing Chun class, I could actually get one in MAC, because one of my instructor qualifications is Junfang Gung Fu, and its trapping and progressions are all based out of Wing Chun. So for me at that point, when I'd had that as a clear goal, my goal then was to pursue that as much as I could, but it was far more difficult back then than it is today. Stop, start, find somebody else. I remember going up to Stoke-on-Trent for one session with a guy now who's sadly passed away, called Dave Carnell. He was a great advocate of Junfang Gung Fu and Jeet Kune Do back in the day. And I still hadn't been exposed to that much of it, that I understood who was who within the hierarchy. I eventually came across somebody who could. Sorry.
It is derived from the free software Chromium OS and use.
My Siri thing went mad in the middle of the room. So I eventually came across somebody who got a a Junfan qualification, and at that point, that seemed like the good thing to me to do. The guy I'm talking about now is Rob Locke, who I trained with way back. I did lots and lots of Thai with Rob. Had a very positive experience training with him in those days. That connected me to Sifu Rick Young, or Guru Rick Young, or Professor Rick Young in Edinburgh in Scotland. And he is probably the epitome. No, okay, I'm going to re-say that. He is the epitome of a true martial artist to me. He's without doubt for me one of the hardest working, one of the most knowledgeable, one of the most approachable martial artists that I've met. And I think it would be mid-90s maybe. I had the great fortune to become one of his students and to be able to train with him on a regular basis, and then gain my certification under him in Junfan Junfan Kung Fu, Jeet Kune Do, and Filipino Kali. And to this day, he remains. We're now a friend, but he also remains as my instructor, my mentor, in terms of martial arts and many other things. Once I got that connection, that really for me accelerated a lot of things that happened with me. So then I went on to train, and still do, with Sensei Erik Paulson, the founder of CSW, who is 2 times world light heavyweight shoot fighting champion, kind of an absolute encyclopedia in martial arts. Brilliant instructor. And to give an example, when I first met Rick Young, I thought, wow, yeah, but he's kind of he's not as big as I am, so he moves so well because he's smaller, and smaller guys move better, which is total tosh. He just moves so well because he's trained so hard. And then I met Erik Paulson, who I thought, wow, he's a big guy. But just a second, he moves so well, he knows so much, he's so connected. And I can remember thinking, okay, well, that's one block removed. I need to get that out of my head. All these things are possible. So through Rick, I came to Guru Inosanto. Back then, as part of the being put under Guru Dan by Rick Young. And now we're talking inspiration. If the other guys are motivation to work hard, and if they are kind of great role models to be as a martial artist, then surely Guru Inosanto must be the inspiration, because he's just amazing.
For people that don't know, Guru Dan is a direct link to Bruce Lee,
okay.
Isn't it?
Fair comment. So Guru Dan, when he met Bruce Lee, was a black belt with Ed Parker. Ed Parker invited Bruce Lee to his Long Beach tournament and asked Guru Dan to host him, if you like. This is how I understand the story. He did, and Sigong Lee was very hands-on, and apparently they hit it off more or less straight away. And from then onwards, I think for 9-10 years, they were inseparable. Bruce Lee coined the word Jeet Kune Do with Guru Dan, I think, or kind of said, this is what I'm going to call it. Jeet Kune Do basically meaning the way of the intercepting fist, Jeet meaning to intercept, Kune meaning fist, and Do meaning the way. And obviously, Guru Dan then had this bank of knowledge that he from Sigong Lee. And if I'm hesitating a bit now, I'm trying to be politically correct in the way I explain this, because I don't really want to create loads of other things going on. But let's suffice to say, for me, as I understand it, Guru Dan is the sole source of Jeet Kune Do from Bruce Lee. There are other instructors out there who are certified in Junfang Kung Fu. Without getting into the semantics of that, because I don't want to, because I don't want to make it about this, it's this or this. So all you need to understand is that Guru Inosanto is an awesome human being and an awesome martial artist. And all of the people that I'm talking about follow down from that lineage in some way. So that connection for me has been strong. The likes of in the UK, Sifu Rick Young, as I've already said, some of the more well-known names, Guru Bob Breen in London, Sifu Teddy Barnett, Guru Teddy Barnett, and people like that. They were the first guys that carried the torch of JKD, and there's a whole raft of people now that are coming behind them that are all, you know, amazing martial artists, and that path has spread out. But it wasn't so easy back then. I think Guru Dan, if I remember rightly, was in London somewhere in the early 80s, but I think Rick said he started training with him in the early 80s. But it wouldn't be, again, we couldn't do what we're doing now, and we couldn't suddenly go, hey, Rich, Guru Dan Inosanto is over. He's Bruce Lee's protege, and he's the Jeet Kune Do guy. Let's go. It was, if I knew you and you knew somebody, we did it by phone call or by being in the same place. So almost like in some cases, the best kept secret. So much more difficult now. If last night, as part of the CSW UK group, I was touching base with Tanya Paulson in California, with Mauro Sacchetto in Italy, with Steve in Spain, with a couple of the guys, James and Dave Lee over in the UK. I was talking to people up in Wigan, people in Coventry. That just wasn't possible back in that day. It was, it was kind of, if you knew, you knew. If you didn't know, well, hopefully somebody might tell you. Anyway, coming back to my journey. So by now, for me, most of my training was focused around going up and training with Rick Young as much as I possibly could. And then along the way, I got introduced to Erik Paulson. Followed on quite quickly then by most of my coaches or instructors have been introduced in one way or another to me by Rick Young, or it's been suggested to me that I should maybe go out and look at this person or look at that person. And there is some element here within this of the student-instructor relationship. As my instructor, maybe Rick Young would tell me, look, maybe you need to do this, maybe you should look at this. And that's up to me whether I choose to do it. The Jeet Kune Do platform today, following, if we like, the model that Guru Dan has laid down, is Guru Dan's a great believer in studying, or Guru Inosanto's a great believer in studying many martial arts. I wouldn't even begin to know how many instructorships that he has, or how he still continues. His work ethic among his students is legendary. He still trains, he cross-trains across other martial arts consistently, and he's in his 80s. So that kind of Jeet Kune Do, bearing in mind that Jeet Kune Do was never meant to be commercialized. Never. So Kali was taught underneath that, kickboxing was taught underneath that, Muay Thai was taught underneath that, Wing Chun was taught underneath that. Later on, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu came under that same umbrella. So at that point in time that I'm referring to now, so I met, he's now Maestro Mauricio Gomez. So Mauricio Gomez is Audrey Gracie's dad, one of 7 black belts under Holes Gracie, who was considered to be one of the greatest Gracie Jiu-Jitsu players there is. I also met Roger at the time when he was in his early days, but the biggest probably influence for me at that time was Mauricio was doing a seminar for me in our Hal's Own Academy, and remember now, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is new to the country. He was teaching out of the custard factory in Birmingham, but not really, not making any impact beyond, wow, this thing is about now. Who's seen the UFC? We were talking a little bit of that before we went live. Who's seen the UFC and why did it work that way? And Mauricio was another one of those people who's just an amazing martial artist, but a great person and an amazing instructor. And at the time that he was there, a couple of guys that he was training came in. One of those was Braulio Estima, Professor Estima. And we were kind of doing the seminar, and Braulio came on the mat to do some specific sparring. And I went with him once. I went with a couple of the other guys, and it was early days for jiu-jitsu, so there's a little bit of trade-off. Braulio at the time would be a long, thin brown belt, big smile on his face, kind of set into his guard. Boom. I went, okay, what happened? Big smile on his face. So, it's okay, my friend. And I went, I can do it again. I can't remember, but I think I probably went back in there about 7 times, and every single time he would do something, he'd smile, he'd do something, he'd smile. The last one, he snapped a choke on me, which virtually put me out. But I literally walked over to Mauricio Gomez. I said, Professor, how do I continue? How do I learn this? He said, Braulio's going to take over in Birmingham. Go train with Braulio, which then started my time with Braulio, who to this day remains a great friend. I have a great affinity with him personally and as a martial artist. And in fact, I don't know if Braulio will ever do this, but I was at Braulio's wedding, and sat next to me on one side was Remco Pardell, who was in UFC 1. 2 people down from me was Roger Gracie. So we were in some heady company at that point in time. Anyway, going back to my training, I trained privately with Braulio consistently for years. Braulio brought many Brazilians over. Otávio Souza, who was a fantastic jiu-jitsu player, champion, great person. Loads more Brazilians came through from all different parts of Europe, coming in, coming out, and all this type of stuff. And then Braulio brought his younger brother over, who is now head of Gracie Barra Europe, Victor Estima. So at the time, I sponsored Victor to come into the UK. And Victor, the way it was happening for these guys then, it was very much get a visa, get in, go out, come back, and so on and so forth. Victor came. Victor settled down, worked out of my academy in Al Zoin, taught jiu-jitsu classes there. Some of the great jiu-jitsu players in Birmingham are ex-students of MAC that continue to put the focus into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Laura Barker would be one of those that would be current and an ex-MAC student. And once with Victor, then my training went between Victor and Braulio. Back in those days, if you got a belt in Jiu-Jitsu, you got whipped, and the structure was less organised and less laid out as it is today in GB. Over a period of time, they taught me Jiu-Jitsu. We became great friends. We became part of each other's lives through family and all this type of stuff. And in fact, then Victor wanted to expand out, which I was totally fine with. And now Victor has his academy. Braulio has his academies in Birmingham. Victor has his academies up in Nottingham. And in fact, I was up with Victor a few weeks ago, and on the mat with him in his academy. And sometimes he called me out to the front to stand with him. You know, he is my professor, he is my instructor, and kind of said to the guys that were in his class, if it wasn't for this man, he said, none of us would be here. I wouldn't be here, and you wouldn't be here. We wouldn't have the place. Which is probably 15, 16 years later on from the fact. I think for me, that's a testimony of how martial arts can bind people together, like-minded people who are on the same path. The other instructor for me who's probably outside of this that I must mention because he's absolutely critical in my development. So for me, Sifu Rick Young, Guru Inosanto, 100%, Sifu Rick Young, Sensei Erik Paulson, or Coach Erik Paulson, Braulio Estima, Victor Estima, both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu professors. They are all people now that, for me, I've known for 20, 25 years or more. They are phenomenal martial artists. I am so blessed and lucky to have these as my instructors. Sometimes the connection was made because it was available, sometimes because they wanted it to be that way. However it came about, for me, having the pleasure of training under these instructors for so long is awesome. There's one of my instructors who sits outside of this a little bit, is Tommy Thompson. Tommy Thompson's my boxing coach, or one of my boxing coaches, more developed into my my martial arts career. Tommy's based in Nottingham, and he has there's a few martial artists that he teaches, should I say, but he doesn't have the affinity for the way martial arts operates, the instructor-student relationship, the family relationship like that. Tommy was, back in the day, was part of the Brendan Ingalls camp. He was one of Prince Nazi's trainers. He's trained with the likes of Johnny Nelson, Junior Witter, people like this. So, you know, he's right up there in terms of British boxing coaches. And in fact, again, it was Rick that said to me, have you seen this guy, Paul? You should go check him out, see what you think. So I went along to Tommy, and I could tell more, I'm going on, but I could tell more stories about the coaches, about the instructors, and how, you know, funny stories, anecdotal stories that would be good. But I went along to Tommy, and from the first moment I met him, we just had this almost instant affinity. He ripped my handwork and my movement to pieces in terms of boxing, which is one of the things that was very refreshing for me about that is, and I think a lot of our people don't always see this, they kind of forget that, you know, we all need to remember that white belt mentality. We all need to not think we know it, and we all need to just kind of go, you know what, guys, show me. And Tommy, I still see Tommy to this day, not as regularly as I used to. In fact, he started doing some work with my son, Kian, recently. But Tommy is an amazing coach. Absolutely fantastic in what he shows and what he teaches and what he does and how he does it. Great person to train with, great coach to train with. But very, very out of the kind of come in, put a gi on, bow, and that type of world, which was, I found, very refreshing. And also for me, Jeet Kune Do is an art. You know, he's very based in boxing because that was what Bruce Lee did. Bruce Lee went and said, you know, take whatever you need from whatever art to suit how you do. So for me, if you want to be a Jeet Kune Do person, you have to study Jun Fan Kung Fu, Jeet Kune Do, and probably now Filipino Kali, and probably Muay Thai to some extent, but certainly Jeet Kune Do person has to be steeped in Jun Fan Kung Fu. If you want to say it's Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, okay. Now, for me, an element of that undoubtedly is boxing. So I kind of dived into that quite deeply, going right the way back to when we started. You asked me this question about where, you know, what was my first influence. My first influence was my dad, right the way back to those roots. But now it's different because he was at it one way. Now we're talking about Tommy was doing it. So for me, those are kind of my that is my core of my instructors. And I came to a conclusion a long time ago now that you can only have so many instructors. You know, your Jeet Kune Do people, we are used to, you know, taking principle concept over specific art, if you like. You know, so, you know, we'll talk about 4 ranges of combat, 5 ways of attack, and we should be able to bring that out, pull that out from whatever it is that we're doing at the time. The sophistication of Filipino Kali, for example, where a lot of the principles align with the Jeet Kune Do principles that Sigong Lee laid down, or the in-depth training of Jiu-Jitsu, because what are the evolving arts have today? The great arts, what do they have today? They evolve because they engage, they spar. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai. Why? Because they engage, they do things. MMA, you know, it's not traditional arts as such, but can you make it work? And, you know, we can all make it work to a different level, but can you make it work? So those are the core of my instructors. And I'm being honest, I couldn't manage anymore. I have met some awesome martial artists, some guys that I really would love to train with, and some guys that I've kind of met and gone, yeah, that would be cool. And some guys that these guys have introduced, my instructors have introduced me to. But I came to the conclusion at one point, I don't have the time nor the capacity to keep this, or keep adding on and picking out. So, you know, Jeet Kune Do, Junfang Kung Fu, Muay Thai, Filipino Kali, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, I'm really proud to be a GB black belt. That's an awesome privilege to have. But first, you know, for me, I'm so proud to be a student of Erik Paulson. I'm so proud to be a student of Rick Young. You know, a student of Tommy Thompson, and of course, you know, anybody ought to be proud just to get into a seminar with Guru Dan at any point. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. You know, I've trained guys as fighters. I've trained guys as grapplers. You know, we train guys because they want to be fitter. We train guys because they want to understand self-protection. We change lives for people in terms of giving them confidence, giving them focus, helping them set goals. With our children, our junior students, you can see one change, and that negates, for me, in a lot of cases. You know, I look at someone like yourself who trains, and I go, okay, that was great. You really got the concept of that. Then I watch this young child do it, and I watch him change, and I watch him develop and grow, and his parents remark about his confidence, and his teachers remark about his focus and his discipline now, and his resilience, and the impact that we have. And if all of the years that I spent training, where I travelled all over the UK, I travelled to LA, I travelled to lots of different places, travelled to every seminar with some of these guys when they were in the country, regularly trained, you know, and sparred with their students and other students and all this type of stuff. But for me, it is that payback thing. How do I take that skill and that knowledge and share that with people who want the skill and the knowledge? And how do I take the mindset, the development of discipline and spirit? And this brings me back to we spoke about COVID-19 earlier on,
mm-hmm.
And this brings me back to that. So, you know, pubs, clubs, shops, etc., facing close downs, gyms facing close downs, martial artists facing close down. So for us, this is an opportunity to go, okay, these are the skills that we've developed over the years, not the physical skills. We know how to persist. We know how to fail. We know how to fail and try again. We know how to fail and adapt. We know how to have to change strategy, change direction. And we know how to, you know, keep going back into something and doing something like that as we go.
I mean, at the heart of that, you mentioning that concept there, that really is the heart of JKD, isn't it, really? You talked about line work earlier and maybe training in line work. This is a way of JKD adapting and training methods adapting, which the whole essence of JKD is find what works for you, and is that
absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. Now, here's the thing: absorb what is useful. Well, for a beginner or even for an advanced practitioner, pretty much anything can be useful if it fits within your perceived view of what it is. Reject what is useless. Now, this is the big one, isn't it? Because how do you establish what is useless? Is it useless because it doesn't work? Is it useless because you can't apply it? Is it useless because you can't apply it at your level of development? Is it useless because you need to come at it in a different way, or you need it explained in a different way, or your instructor's not blending it into you? There's a load of variables in the middle there. But for me, totally, let's remember, first of all, Bruce Lee wasn't into competition. Bruce Lee was into combat as personal development. That's what Jeet Kune Do was about, combat. You know, if you look at the UFC today, and those people are amazing athletes and amazing fighters, that, you know, they'll take a cut to their head and they'll bleed. They'll get their nose broken. They'll go through anything. But when do they stop the match? When do they stop it? If there's a finger jab or a thumb in the eye, and it stops straight away, and they'll call a timeout. When do they stop the match? When somebody gets shot in the groin, even though they're wearing probably a steel cup. So what's the concept of, or one of the main concepts of Jeet Kune Do? It would be that lead hand, longest weapon, nearest target, finger jab. So, you know, again, you've got to, when I'm saying that the great arts that are tested are the brilliant arts of there, I mean that in terms of combat sport, but in terms of self-defense, we need to take the attribute training that the combat sports give us, and we need to adapt. We need to adapt the philosophy of self-protection to the attributes in the same way that we would. Sorry, Rich, I'm going to have to just do 1 sec because somebody's left my dog in here. Just hold on for 1 sec. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make in terms of Jeet Kune Do is, if we look at sport and combat sport, you know, and there's arguments here between, you know, people doing jiu-jitsu and it not being fighting until you put striking in, and that's for another time and for, you know, other people to discuss perhaps as well. But primarily for me as a martial artist, all the sports, boxing, Thai boxing, kickboxing, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, etc., is there to build attributes. But, you know, we're just talking then a little bit about what happens in the cage. When do they stop the match? When do they time out the match? You know, because some of these guys take massive punishment, you know, broken noses, bust lips, you know, so on and so forth, lacerated eyebrows and everything. And they still continue on. They still go. They take massive punishment and they still continue on and they go, except when they get a finger or a thumb in the eye, or when they get a shot to the groin. Now, bearing in mind they're wearing a steel cup. So for me, the difference here is Jeet Kune Do is based around the two things that stop it, whereas everything else is based around the attribute building to be able to operate in that kind of environment. So for me, if I understand the attribute training of the sports, but I can apply that in the terms of philosophy of fighting, then that's the balance that I personally would look for, without me touching on the use of weapons and so on and so forth.
Right. So maybe that's something that we can look to talk about in future episodes of this, if this seems to be a success and people want to talk more about. So
absolutely.
What would you like people to do in terms of letting us know what kind of questions they'd like to be answered and what they'd like to find out more about? Yeah,
absolutely. Look, but I'm one man with one journey. So I've been fascinated by fighting or combat sports ever since I was a young man, and I'm 62 now. I still train. I'm still active. I'm actively teaching. I'm on the mat with students all the while. So I've got 40 odd years of knowledge with some of the greatest instructors on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. That gives me a unique perspective for me. But if people want to, primarily we're looking at this. For me, this is a chance for some of our students to listen, perhaps, to my story and where I am and why I got there. And I'm quite happy to. This is a perfect time for me. If we take what's happening now with COVID-19, is for people to be able to say, okay, why do we do this? What is this? What do you think about that? What should we do here? Why should what is my opinion? And sometimes I'm giving opinion. In most cases, I'm giving an opinion. I'm sure somebody else may have a different opinion, and my journey and my opinions are, from my perception of what's going on in the world. But I'm quite happy for it. If somebody says, what do I think about any element of martial arts? If I think it's valid enough for a discussion, I'm quite happy to talk about it.
Cool. So people can get in touch and either drop a comment when they hear this on whatever platform it might be, and we can try and push that further. And in closing, is there anything that you'd like to say to the students?
Okay, so firstly, I would like to thank, if you're a MAC family member or a member of MAC right now, I'd like to thank you for your support. I'd like to thank all of the full-time team in MAC, because these guys now, they are, we're all in this together, but we're all facing the uncertainty, just as the general population is, but we're facing the uncertainty of what comes next. So my thanks to all of those guys. We've been getting together. We've been together today. We're doing our best to be the epitome of what a great martial artist is, or what martial art teaches you to be. That perseverance, that indomitable spirit, that honesty, integrity, all those other things. So to all of my team, thanks to them all, because they do a fantastic job. They're out there, they working with people, sharing the art that we do, and we are facing potentially tough times, and we will be together and we will work together as much as we can. So thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. To anyone out there who's supported us or been involved with us, thanks. I hope you stay safe and well while this virus is running riot. And to all the students, now is the time to be flexible, to adapt. If you can't train physically, do something mentally. If you can't get up and move or visualize, if you can't do something physically, study something that you can go, how do I look at a video, look at a book. If you want books or anything like that at all, or recommendations, then get in touch. Go through the academies, go through the website. Remember that where we are now is just a moment in time. One of my favourite people is Osho, and I think it's somebody posted recently. One of our team posted recently. Now is the only thing that matters. Everything else is a memory or imagination. Just remember that this will pass. It will always pass. For many years, I had a really great connection with a guy who was big into Taoism, Buddhism, and all this type of stuff. And his name's Paul Darby. He's an awesome person to be around. Not physical at all, but his grasp on philosophy and stuff like that was amazing for me. And when I first met him, he went to me, well, you are where you are today because that's where you should be. And I kind of went, what is that supposed to mean? I was in a bad place at the time. What is that supposed to mean? And he went, yeah, you know what I'm saying. I went, no, I don't know what you're saying. He said, well, you are here due to the sum of all the decisions and choices that you've already made. So I've put myself in a terrible place myself. How is that helping? And he went, Okay, it's not working for you. I went, no. And for our junior students, close your ears now. He said, let me try something different. Shit happened. And it just cracked me up. It was almost like a Zen koan for me. I know that's a different concept, but it just cracked me up. Excuse me. And one of the things that he always said to me was, all good things pass, all bad things pass. Where we are now will pass. What we're doing now will pass. And it might change things, and things might evolve, and they might adapt. But at the end of the day, we will move back to better times. Use the time effectively. Try to be positive. Try to educate or share. Excuse me, guys, but I'm okay. That's just something in my throat. Try to spend the time being positive, supporting people around you where you can be positive. Be the change. Be the positive change. Don't be the negative impact. So to all of you that who do listen, if I don't know you, well, thanks for listening. It's great to share some of my viewpoints. To anybody that's Mac family or part of our academies or anything at all, I wish you all well. We're here for you if you need us. Just get in touch. We'll definitely be getting in touch with you. And, let's just do the best we can.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We will be in touch and we'll be releasing this out there as soon as possible. Thank you.